The day began with a strange feeling Ethan Miller could not explain, a quiet pull in his chest as he stepped onto the warm sand for the company retreat, telling himself it was just another work event even though the ocean air and bright sky made everything feel less controlled than the office. And as he sat near the shoreline watching waves break and people laugh, his mind drifted to how odd it was to see coworkers relaxed, smiling, human, especially Claire Bennett, his boss, who normally moved through meetings with calm authority but now walked barefoot along the beach with a guarded look in her eyes, scanning faces as if searching for something she hoped not to find, and before Ethan could fully process why his attention stayed fixed on her, she suddenly changed direction and walked straight toward him, her steps quick and tense, her jaw tight, and without warning she lowered herself onto his lap, close enough that he could feel the sudden weight and heat of another person, close enough that his breath caught. And in a low voice meant only for him she said, "Stay still, my ex is watching," and in that moment time seemed to fold inward, sounds dulling, colors sharpening, as Ethan froze not out of fear but surprise, his hands unsure where to rest, his heart pounding hard, aware of how innocent it must look to anyone else yet how serious her tone felt, and he realized this was not flirtation or humor but fear, a reflex born from a past he knew nothing about, and as he followed her gaze without turning his head he spotted a man near the waterline, tall and still, watching with an intensity that made Ethan's stomach tighten, and Claire leaned slightly closer, her posture stiff, her breath shallow, using Ethan as a shield, and in that shared silence he felt something unexpected, not desire but responsibility, a quiet decision to stay calm for her, to be steady, and he focused on the rhythm of the waves and the warmth of the sun to slow his racing thoughts while people around them laughed and passed by unaware, and he wondered how someone as confident as Claire could look so unsettled, how the past could reach so far into the present, and as seconds stretched into minutes he felt the weight of what it meant to be trusted like this without being asked, without explanation, and when the man finally looked away and walked down the beach Claire did not move right away, as if her body needed proof the danger had passed, and in that pause Ethan noticed small details, the tension in her shoulders, the faint tremble she tried to hide, the way strength sometimes masks deep cracks, and when she finally stood, brushing sand from her dress, she met Ethan's eyes with something close to apology and something closer to gratitude, and though she said little, the moment left a mark on him, because it showed him a side of her no one at work ever saw, a side that felt real and fragile, and as the day continued and laughter returned around them, Ethan could not shake the feeling that something important had just begun, not loudly or clearly, but quietly, in a single unexpected moment on a beach where two lives brushed against each other and did not return to their old shape. Claire stayed on Ethan's lap longer than he expected, and the weight of her presence was heavier than the sun, more pressing than the ocean breeze, as if she carried not just herself but the shadow of someone else's gaze, and Ethan felt the tension coil around him, aware of Mark, her ex, standing near the shoreline, tall and composed, yet every movement sharp and deliberate, making it clear he had noticed them, making it clear he still had a place in Claire's world even if she pretended otherwise. Her voice, low and hesitant, broke the quiet, "I didn't plan this. I just panicked," and Ethan nodded, unsure if he should speak, unsure if he even had the right, yet the trust implicit in her sitting there, using him as a shield, seeking calm in him, pressed him into stillness, forcing him to focus on the subtle details he never noticed before, the way her hair caught the sunlight, the tension in her jaw, the slight quiver of her fingers against his arm, all signals of a vulnerability she never displayed at the office, and when Mark finally turned away, Claire rose slowly, brushing sand from her dress, her eyes meeting Ethan's in a look that said more than words ever could, a silent apology mixed with gratitude, a recognition that he had been patient, steady, and present in a moment where most would have turned away, the walk along the beach afterward was quiet, filled with the unspoken weight of their shared experience, and though the sun was warm on their skin and the air smelled of salt and sunscreen, the atmosphere between them felt charged, as if the ocean itself was holding its breath, and when evening came, the group gathered around a fire pit, laughter and conversation filling the space, but Ethan noticed the subtle moments where Claire's eyes found his across the flames, fleeting but deliberate, hints of thoughts unshared, emotions carefully hidden yet impossible to deny, and he felt a strange mixture of curiosity and protectiveness, a pull to understand what lingered beneath her calm exterior, and though she engaged with the group, her smiles and jokes were measured, as if she carried the memory of that moment on the beach like a secret she wasn't ready to reveal, and Ethan realized that some connections, some feelings, do not need grand gestures or confessions to exist. They can bloom quietly, in silence, in a shared glance, a gentle brush of hands, a moment of trust amidst the chaos of everyday life. As night deepened and the stars reflected on the gentle waves, he thought about the fragility of people's hearts, how past relationships cast long shadows, how courage is sometimes just letting someone sit beside you while the world watches, and he understood that the experience was already changing him, reshaping the way he saw Claire, the way he saw the boundaries between professional and personal, between admiration and something more intimate yet undefined. And as the fire crackled and conversations continued, Ethan felt a steady warmth that had nothing to do with the flames, a certainty that the beach, the moment of shared tension, had opened a door neither of them had expected, a door to trust, understanding, and perhaps the beginning of a connection that could not be undone by time, distance, or circumstance. And though neither spoke of it, both knew that their lives had shifted in subtle, irrevocable ways, and as they walked back to their rooms later, the night air cool against their skin, the quiet between them was not awkward but full, weighted with possibility, filled with the unspoken acknowledgement that some moments are designed not to conclude but to linger, to grow, and to change the course of everything that comes after. Back at the office, the world seemed to return to its usual rhythm, bright fluorescent lights, ringing phones, and the familiar hum of computers, but for Ethan Miller, nothing felt the same. The memory of that day on the beach hovered in the corners of his mind, a quiet pulse that made every interaction with Claire Bennett sharper, more loaded with unspoken emotion, and though she carried herself with her usual confidence and professionalism, he noticed the small changes, the way she lingered slightly longer in meetings, the way her eyes found his across the room, the subtle shifts in her tone when speaking to him, as if she measured every word to balance caution with the desire to reach out. And Ethan told himself to ignore it, to focus on his work, but every email, every shared glance, every accidental brush of hands reminded him that something between them had shifted, something fragile, quiet, yet undeniably present. And one evening as the office emptied and the last golden rays of sun fell through the blinds, he stayed behind, buried in reports, only to notice that Claire's office light was still on, a beacon in the quiet space. And when she noticed him, she did not mask her surprise or her concern. "You don't have to stay," she said softly, yet there was an edge in her voice, a weight that carried the hint of personal stakes rather than professional obligation. And Ethan looked up, feeling the familiar rush of warmth mixed with nervous tension. "I know. But I wanted to," he replied, and they studied each other in silence for a moment, the air thick with the kind of unspoken understanding that only comes from shared experiences. And then she spoke, quieter now, more vulnerable. "My ex emailed me. He wants to talk," and Ethan felt a strange ache, a tangle of protective instinct and curiosity tightening in his chest, and he asked, softly, carefully, "Do you want to?" And Claire looked down, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear, unsure, hesitating, the strong, controlled exterior cracking ever so slightly. "I don't know. That's what scares me," she admitted. And in that instant, Ethan realized that the woman he had admired from afar, who had always seemed untouchable and self-contained, was human in ways he had never seen, carrying uncertainty, fear, and longing just like anyone else. And as he watched her, he felt a deepening connection, a sense of being chosen as witness to this private struggle, and though nothing physical occurred, the emotional closeness tightened around him, wrapping them in a shared tension, a bridge between professional boundaries and personal feeling. And over the next few days, their interactions became a careful dance, light and professional when others were around, yet charged with subtle glances, fleeting touches, and conversations that lingered on meaning, feelings, and possibilities without ever naming them. And Ethan found himself analyzing every small signal, her smile, the tone of her voice, the way she leaned slightly closer during discussions, searching for clues, while Claire herself seemed caught between fear and desire, awareness of her ex still hanging over her while an undeniable trust and safety grew in Ethan's presence, and each moment together became a test of restraint, patience, and understanding, a negotiation of boundaries without any explicit acknowledgement, the tension growing yet never crossing into impropriety, until one evening, late and empty office all around them, Claire confided more, "I don't want to pretend nothing happened. And Ethan felt the words settle deep, grounding him in the realization that their connection was no accident, that shared experiences could create a quiet intimacy stronger than any spoken declaration, and he responded honestly, softly, "Neither do I," and though still careful, still professional, the moment marked a turning point, a subtle opening of doors to emotions they had both contained for too long, a recognition that life sometimes moves in small, secret increments, building a foundation before it reveals itself fully, and as they packed up for the night, the weight of possibilities hung between them, promising change, challenging them to navigate feelings carefully, and leaving Ethan with a thrilling sense of anticipation, a hope wrapped in restraint, a quiet understanding that the path ahead was uncertain but richer, deeper, and undeniably more compelling than anything either of them had expected. Weeks passed, and life at the office resumed its usual pace, yet for Ethan Miller and Claire Bennett, the memory of the beach lingered like a quiet undercurrent, shaping thoughts, stirring feelings they could not ignore, and when Claire suggested they meet again, this time not by chance, but by choice, at the same stretch of sand where tension, trust, and unspoken connection had first collided, Ethan felt a rush of anticipation tempered by a cautious curiosity, and as he arrived, the late afternoon sun bathed the shore in warm hues of orange and gold, reflecting off the gentle waves, and there she was, standing barefoot, hair catching the light, eyes scanning the horizon, yet finding him in the corner of her gaze, and the air between them was charged, not with anxiety or fear, but with possibility, a quiet thrill that comes when two people meet knowing the weight of past moments without needing to speak them aloud, and Claire finally broke the silence with a measured calm. "I ended it for good," she said, her voice steady yet soft, carrying a mixture of relief, hesitation, and vulnerability, and Ethan nodded, understanding immediately that this declaration was not about him, not yet, but about her reclaiming her life, her choice, her peace, and he felt respect and warmth swell inside him, realizing that love, trust, and attraction are sometimes born not from haste or drama but from careful, deliberate honesty, and they began to walk along the waterline together, shoes in hand, the sand cool beneath their feet, the waves brushing close as if to witness the delicate unfolding of a new chapter, and though neither reached for the other, the proximity spoke volumes, the quiet conversation flowing in words, glances, and laughter, small moments that built intimacy stronger than any grand gesture could, and when Claire paused to look at him, she admitted, almost shyly, "I don't know what this is, and I won't rush it, but I don't want to pretend nothing happened," and Ethan, smiling softly, replied, "Neither do I," a phrase that carried agreement, reassurance, and willingness, and as they continued walking, the sunset painting streaks of pink and gold across the sky, they shared stories, dreams, fears, and hopes, the vulnerability between them creating a bond that felt both fragile and enduring, a reminder that real connection is often quiet, subtle, and built in the spaces where two people allow themselves to be truly seen, and as the last rays of sunlight slipped below the horizon, they stopped, letting the ocean rhythm speak for them, the gentle ebb and flow reflecting the tentative, yet growing, emotional connection, and Ethan realized that sometimes the most powerful moments are those that require patience, respect, and trust, and that romance can exist not in dramatic declarations but in steady companionship, mutual understanding, and the willingness to face uncertainty together, and though they parted that evening without holding hands or sharing overt signs of affection, the air between them was heavy with promise, anticipation, and a quiet certainty that their lives had shifted irrevocably, that the trust, patience, and honesty they had cultivated on that familiar stretch of sand would serve as the foundation for a bond that could grow in its own time, unforced, natural, and enduring, and as Ethan walked back toward the distant lights of the town, he felt a sense of calm exhilaration, a recognition that the path ahead was open, mysterious, and full of potential, and that some moments, small, deliberate, and shared with care, could change the course of two lives forever, shaping their future with gentle, undeniable power.